the guys in the back here at Woodward Sports, and we're talking about Jameson Williams, and he brought up a point that I knew but I didn't think about. Jameson didn't play really a lot in college at all. He didn't play at Ohio State. He played 1 year at Alabama, then was drafted into the NFL. Drafted to the Lions. Missed a majority of his first year and was suspended the first 6 games the following year. Now, he does deserve blame for the suspension. It was dumb. I didn't like the suspension, I didn't like the rule itself. It was that's me, though, but regardless, he was suspended. So, again, he's not absolved from blame. But if you look at from last year to this year, total number of offensive snaps in totality, 478, okay? The last year and a half, roughly. And then you go back to St. Brown's rookie year. He had double the snaps in 14 games. Jameson Williams so far has played around 17 games in his career. So about the same games, St. Brown has had double the snaps his rookie year. So when we bring up targets and we bring up snaps, being on the field and getting targets, that equates, especially if you don't drop the football, which he's been a lot better at that. I know early on that was the big conversation. That equates to stats. Like if you're playing a lot and you're getting targeted, you give him an opportunity, that can equate to stats. In the last 2 weeks, the snap count has been increasing, or the last couple of weeks. And Sam Flannel, I think we're starting to see him used the way that I wanted him to be used. Not just, a gadget. Not just hey, we're going to throw a deep shot to him once or twice and we'll call it that. We'll call it a day after that. They're using him in different ways. They're targeting him early. And the routes that Khalif Raymond was running before J-Mo fully got back, you see J-Mo running those routes, the little drag routes. Give him a 10-yard dump off and let him just get yak. That's what Jameson could do with his speed. Him and Goff are on the same page, and Goff is starting to trust him more and more. And I absolutely love that Ben Johnson, and I don't think these guys don't check social media. I don't think that Ben Johnson has seen the discussions, but they're using him more, and it's paying off. Jameson Williams, his stock is rising. In this team, what are they missing on offense in terms of their wide receiver core? A number 2. They have Amon-Ra St. Brown, and I'd say their number 2, Sam Laporta, a tight end, which isn't bad. I mean, nowadays, tight ends are basically wide receivers, so I don't have an issue with that. But a number 2 wideout, or a guy that can move around, a wide receiver. And J-Mo's kind of starting to creep up and take that spot. You look at the last 2 games for J-Mo, and it started really 2 games ago when you started looking at the success he's had when he led the team where he was tied with St. Brown at halftime in targets. But you go back to Denver, he had 7 targets, 4 catches, 47 yards. Okay, good game, solid. Then you look at this last game, 6 targets, 5 catches, 43 yards. And again, made another guy miss. That's what he's been doing with the football, making guys miss, which honestly is something we haven't really seen a lot of because they haven't really given him the ball in space. It's more just deep shots, allowing him to run like a track athlete. But now they're giving him the football and kind of letting him make plays. Sam, it's paying off. And I think Jameson Williams is only going to get better. And that's why I brought up the snap count, because he hasn't played a ton in the NFL. So the more experience he gets, the more time he's out there making plays, getting used to the NFL, getting comfortable. He only played a year in college. I think all the experience helps him, and he's gaining more of that. And he's heating up at the right time, right before the postseason. He's a weapon that I'm happy the Detroit Lions are utilizing. Because I've always been a J-Mo fan, and I know we've had these arguments, and I agree that he's not absolved from any blame. I don't want to say that. But he's proven people that he can be a piece of this team for the long term.
One thing I found kind of interesting, especially with the way they've used him in the last couple of games. You look back to some of his highlights earlier on in the year. You look at the Tampa Bay game where he caught that long touchdown pass to put the game out of reach. That wasn't a game where he was on the field a lot, but when they needed him to be that deployed weapon, he certainly was that and made the big play in the game. You look at the game against the Chicago Bears where they were down by 12, were looking to cut the Bears lead and then get a stop and then get the ball back. One of the ways you do that, especially when there's not a lot of time on the clock, is you need to hit a big play, and they did to Jameson Williams. But even during that game, you didn't see him on the field a ton. He wasn't getting some of those timing routes that he's now getting. You look at the New Orleans Saints game, he scored on like an end around. That was obviously a huge play in the game, but that was another one where it's like They're not targeting him a lot. He's not on the field as much as maybe you'd like. But in these last couple of games, I've noticed that he's getting a lot of those same routes that they were giving to guys like Josh Reynolds earlier on in the year, guys like Khalif Raymond, those timing routes. Because one of the things that I noticed when watching the game, and I think this is impressive about the Lions offense when it's humming, is a lot of those throws Jared Goff is making are at his drop back just right on time. Those routes on the sideline, those routes down the middle, and most of them throughout Jared Goff's career in Detroit have gone to Amon-Ra St. Brown, and then this year Sam Laporta, and at the beginning of the year Josh Reynolds. But they clearly, this Ben Johnson, the Lions coaching staff, Jared Goff, they trust that Jameson Williams is going to make the plays. He's going to make those 3rd and 7 catches that are going to result in first downs. He's going to make those catches in traffic. He's going to make those ones on the sideline where he has very little room, but he still manages to juke a guy out of their shoes, and I'll give him a lot of credit for that. So Jameson Williams is turning into a guy who may turn out to be the number 2 wide receiver, not just a gimmicky player who runs go routes and gets end arounds. He's becoming more of a complete receiver like he was at Alabama. I still want to see him have that game or that play where he catches a short pass and takes it to the house. I still want to see him have that game where he maybe gets like 6 catches for 100 and some yards and a touchdown. But I like the way that they're using him more now, especially because they obviously have faith that he can be an every down receiver. And you haven't seen that throughout much of the year, but in the last 2 games you have. And kudos to Jameson Williams for that.
Yeah, and no doubt. I want KG's opinion on this, too, because, KG, we've been in kind of lockstep with JMO. You believe in his potential. How does it feel to kind of see him get the targets? I mean, 6 targets, 7 targets. I think that's going to continue, hopefully.
Yeah, it's validation, man, because this guy, he's been working hard the whole season. And the difference between like a Khalif Raymond 11-yard, route and a JMO 11-yard route is JMO's can go for like 44 in a touchdown. That's why we've been screaming, like, you have to get the ball in this guy's hands. Get the ball to your best playmakers in space and watch them work. And you're, like Sam said, you're starting to see more of what this guy can do. He can catch in traffic. He can catch on the sideline. You're seeing more of his route tree now. He's becoming more of a complete receiver, but you can only do that when you're being targeted. And it just seems like Jared Goff is finally starting to gain trust with JMO, and you're seeing the results.
Yeah, you're speaking facts, KG. I'm with you. And you brought up a great point, too. It's not just the receptions, it's how he's getting the football. He made a tough catch against the Broncos.
Yeah.
Like, both hands ready to catch the football. It's not just what he's doing, it's how he's doing it. It's like, okay, he's showing us more and more, which is a positive thing. Will Herbin says Pistons hat today is crazy. He said, damn, KG,
hey,
with the
man,
Pistons.
Somebody got to support this bullshit.
Somebody has to.
Somebody got
to carry the boats. Brandon, what about you on JMO? I know you've been high on him. Just how his play as of late.
Yeah, I think his play of late, I think it's more a thing. It speaks to the comfortability that Jared Goff is getting with Jameson Williams. Early in the season, it looked like they couldn't get their timing right, like their chemistry was just off, and I think it plays to the fact that Jameson has just missed some time.
Right.
As they've gotten more comfortable, it seems like, and Jared Goff talked about it, they've had the opportunity to really, really go and target this guy, and we're seeing exactly what he can do. I'm hoping that the targets continue to go up. Like, yes. I know Terry Foster, the great man, he was talking about it on Woodward and Maine, the Lions Insider Show here, hosted by Matt and Gabby, that he wants to see him get targeted like 11, 12, 13 times a game.
Right. Hold on. Okay. That's where I'm going to stop. Trust me, selfishly, absolutely. Because you got to give Amon-Ra his 14.
It's a lot of weapons on this squad.
That's why, because that's where me and Sam agree. It's hard. You got a lot of mouths to feed. I mean, selfishly, I would love if Jameson got. I think 6 to 7 is money, because if he can catch 5 of those a game with his yards per catch and his yak, he can get you 60, 70 yards.
And that's where I was going to. Like, me personally, I believe 7 to 8 targets a game, especially if his hands are looking as sure as they have over the last couple of weeks. He's held onto the ball through some big hits. He's held onto the ball going through the middle, catching it, and really finding a way to get him in space. Another thing that I want to see the Lions hopefully do a little bit more of is add some of those wrinkles where they get him incorporated in the run game and some reverses, and really allowing him to allow his speed to make a difference in space.
Absolutely.
That's something I definitely want to see the Lions do a little bit more of. And with the type of offensive coordinator that Ben Johnson is, I already know he got those wrinkles all the way, already ready for this squad. I wouldn't be surprised to see something like that kind of come to fruition against the Dallas Cowboys.
I want to read some of these comments. People are preaching facts in the chat. Got to give him some credit here. Silent says, I love how he's catching with his hands now, which makes him much more of a friendly target. Wheezy D says they actually have him an opportunity instead of giving Amon-Ra St. Brown all the in routes. Give Jamal some. There you go. Max Mayer, I think Jamal's yak in the Broncos and Vikings game shows growth. James says, I think Benny Johnson is creating plays that make J-Mo move up the progressions. I know John Macroon asked J-Mo about that. And he's like, hey, most of these plays, I'm not the first option, the first read, or even sometimes the second read, which, that's going to happen. You got St. Brown and Sam Laporta who are playing out of their minds. Of course, those guys should be the number 1 and 2 progressions for Jared Goff. Get the football to one of those guys and then kind of figure out after that. But the fact that they're utilizing J-Mo, drawing up some plays for him, it is positive. There's no doubt about that. Danny Sullivan, 5 for 60 from the 12th overall pick. This is what we want. I will admit, if you're a 12th overall pick, absolutely you should be a number 1 wide receiver. I'll admit that. But what are we going to do now about it? He's already drafted. He's here. If you could at least just be a number 2, Sam, I'll take it. But I'm not going to sit here and argue that you draft a guy 12 to be your number 2 wide receiver. I got nothing for that. I mean, because he is right.
And I don't think this is the day to really be crapping on anyone when it comes to the Detroit Lions. I'm not saying he was doing that. I get his point 100%. And in principle, I agree with that. That's why, and here, I'll make a statement that might sound a little bit, you might not like it at first, but I just have to put this out there.
Uh-oh.
Jameson Williams is the people who are now saying that he is unequivocally not a bust, and anybody who even mentioned that are crazy. I don't think he's earned that quite yet. But he is making plays, and he is becoming more involved into the offense on a team that's winning. And I think people like Terry Foster who say, what are you going to say? Give him 20 targets next game is a little crazy because you don't need to. Because here's the thing. When Jared Goff is your quarterback, and this is not a knock on Jared Goff at all, you are going to need receivers like Amon-Ra St. Brown who can run those short, concise routes, and the timing can be perfect. You're going to need a safety blanket like Sam Laporta who obviously Jared Goff has great chemistry with and can also run the timing routes very, very well. Jameson Williams, to me, will never be as good of a possession receiver as those two are.
Yes.
But if Jameson Williams can maybe make a game-breaking play or two a game, along with being a capable possession receiver, which he is showing in these last 2 games, that is where Jameson Williams hits his ceiling. But I will always say, as long as the Lions are winning and their offense looks like it's humming, I'm not going to complain because I'm not going to be that person that does that.
And I'm just saying, if we're doing 60 yards a game, you know what that equates to over a 17-game season?
1,000.
Nice.
So, although I agree that if you draft a guy that high, you expect him to eventually take over as the number 1, but you also have a St. Brown, who's a top 7 wide receiver. You just happen to find in the 4th round. So, yeah, that is one thing. But still, I'll take 1,000 yards from my number 2 wide receiver if he can give me 60 a game.
If he has an 1,000-yard season, I mean, that's what more can. If he has multiple 1,000-yard seasons, that would be spectacular.
Now, this is a great point, and I'm not saying that J-Mo's this player, but when you think of number 2, Max Mayer says Waddle's a number 2, and he was drafted higher than J-Mo.
Yeah, but Waddle's had 1,000 yards every year he's played.
So for J-Mo, if he does get 1,000 and he's a number 2 option next year, the following year, whatever, I'll take it.
And he might not be a number 2 receiver forever, but when a guy like Amon-Ra St. Brown emerges like he has, that might render Jameson Williams the number 2, but they're just different kind of players. Maybe they can be 1A and 1B someday and just be used a little bit differently. It could happen. And for the record, I'm not saying that Jameson Williams is a bust or I think that he will be a bust. I'm just saying that he hasn't done enough for people to say, oh my goodness, he's unequivocally not a bust and everything you said was wrong. I think he's getting there, and I hope that it does get to that point, but I don't think he's there quite yet. That's all. And
another guy to bring up, and actually I'll give credit to Booner for this because he brought this up first. A good comparison for him, or a player he should, at least if you look at the situation, how he would be used is like a Devonta Smith, I think, with the Eagles. Again, another guy who's had 1,000 yards, but just how he plays alongside AJ, he's skinny. He could be a guy that in games could take over games. In some games, he's quiet. A.J. Brown's the number 1. That's what J-Mo should strive for, is the Waddles, the Devonta Smiths. 2 guys that were drafted high, and they're still really good players, but they're number 2s alongside a great wide receiver, which I think St. Brown is.
Yeah.
He's in at that echelon.
So J-Mo becomes Devonta Smith and like bravo.
Give me 1,000 a year.
And he's more explosive than Devontae Smith.
Yes.
Who is also very explosive himself.
Who won a Heisman at LA.
But Jameson Williams, he's like got that 1% speed, more than like higher than 1%. You know what I'm saying?
It's a good problem to have, though.
Yeah.
You know, the thing that this conversation to me really screams is that they have a wealth of riches on the offensive side of the ball,
True.
man.
Big
And that's
facts.
an awesome thing. I mean, they got 2 really good running backs. They have a lot of good targets for Jared Goff out there. And to me, I don't believe that it's just Jameson Williams isn't getting the targets just because he's not ready. I think it's because of all of the other players that you guys mentioned, and obviously the chemistry with the tight end. They knew that Sam Laporta was more of a wide receiver type of tight end when they drafted him coming in. And we've seen our quarterbacks here throughout history of the Lions franchise have major success with tight ends.
Right.
You know, adding a Jameson Williams to that and allowing him to just kind of get up to speed, especially given what you talked about, you know, not that much experience in college coming into the NFL and needing to kind of get comfortable himself in his own skin. You know, it's a great problem for the Detroit Lions to have, and I do believe that Jameson Williams, as this thing continues to go on, is going to be a plus. I really do.
I think for JMO, it'd be nice that, and I don't want anybody to get injured for St. Brown. He's been healthy for the majority of his career, and that's a good thing. But if there's a game, it doesn't happen often, where St. Brown struggles or St. Brown misses a game, because you look at Waddle and Devonta Smith, you know if A.J. Brown's struggling, Devonta's going to make plays. You know if Tyreek Hill's out, you saw Waddle make plays. He got over 100 yards. That's where I want, if St. Brown, which rarely happens, but if he's struggling at one game, or they're bracketing Amon-Ra St. Brown, I know you have Sam Laporta, but that's like the next thing for Jameson, is go take over a game. Like, and he hasn't done that yet, but still, that's probably the next step for him.
I haven't seen his confidence ding too, man. That's what makes me really comfortable, is that I would assume that a lot of players who come in and kind of have that start to their season, to their careers, that their confidence would be dinged and they would just kind of be relegated to some kind of lesser role. But he's stayed engaged the entire time.
That's a great
man.
point, too.
The entire time. And I do believe it's going to make him ready to be able to step up when the Lions ultimately need it. And that's what's so significant to me about the fact that when we talk about the amount of targets to the amount of touchdowns he's actually had, that to me speaks to a guy who has stayed engaged. He thinks highly of himself. And I think that confidence is going to go a long way for Jameson Williams really meeting the mark for us.
Absolutely. Let's hit the break. Speaking of wide receivers, let's get to St. Brown. And I have a prediction I want to revisit that I talked about early before the season that me and Klotz got into it about. And we're going to revisit that when we come back. But first, got to hear about our friends from Swiss Insurance.